and then 700 push-ups. Whew. Okay, I didn't actually do all that stuff, but man, do my muscles hurt. So, what exactly is it that makes our muscles hurt after exercise? Well, it's all part of our body's process of trying to produce energy. Now, remember, in cellular respiration, we take glucose from the food that we eat, and oxygen from the air that we breathe to create energy. Now, our body's special type of energy it produces is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Now, in cellular respiration, we get 36 molecules of ATP out of every reaction. That's quite a bit of energy. But this is an aerobic process, aerobic. So that means it happens in the presence of oxygen. Now, you can think of aerobic, air, as in air. There's oxygen in the air. Easy to remember. Or aerobic, like those funky aerobic classes your mom goes to. Aerobic. But what happens when our body starts to run low on oxygen? Well, then we start to do a process called fermentation. Fermentation is a process where glucose is degraded down to be turned into energy in the total absence of oxygen. So we call this an anaerobic process. An meaning without, aerobic, without air, without oxygen, not in the presence of oxygen. So it means we have no O2. Now, in our bodies, in humans, our muscles are going to get tired. I may not be the world's best athlete, but even guys like this are going to get tired after a while, and their muscles are going to start to hurt. So what does this guy, fungi, and some bacteria have in common? Well, they all share a process called lactic acid fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation. Now, in human muscle cells, when the oxygen lags behind the rate that we're using glucose, the reaction for producing energy is going to change, and we're going to start to make instead something called lactic acid. Lactic acid. Now, we are going to get energy out of this as well, but because it is an anaerobic process without any oxygen, for our bodies are going to be a little less efficient. So instead of the 36 ATP we're normally going to get, we only get 2 out of lactic acid fermentation. 2 ATP. So, lactic acid fermentation is going to produce 2 ATP and the byproduct lactic acid. So in us humans, lactic acid can accumulate in the muscles during exercise. Whew, man, and it's going to cause the pain we feel. Now, because it is an acid, it's also going to lower the pH of our blood. Now remember, our blood's pH is normally about 7.3, 7.5. An acid is anything less than 7. So naturally, that's going to bring down the pH of our blood, causing us to get tired. So, lactic acid fermentation, nasty byproduct, and a little bit of energy. Now, there's another form of fermentation we're going to talk about today. It is called alcohol fermentation. Now, this is also called alcoholic fermentation, but it's not a process that we humans do. Instead, this is for yeast and some bacteria. Now, instead of producing lactic acid here, there is another byproduct that we call ethanol. Now, ethanol is the most common alcohol, and yes, it is the alcohol that is found in alcoholic drinks. So, even though it's without oxygen, we will have another byproduct from this reaction, which is CO2, carbon dioxide. So, in alcoholic fermentation, we're going to get ethanol and CO2. Now let's see it in action. So, I have here a little bit of yeast. Now, yeast are unicellular organisms. They reproduce asexually, and they are going to use alcohol fermentation to get the energy they need. Now, this is the very same yeast that you can use to bake bread with, and you might even have some in your kitchen at home. So you can try this if you find a bottle and a balloon and some sugar. So, add the yeast to my bottle. I'm going to put in a little bit of table sugar, just some good old glucose, C6H12O6. There you go. Try not to make too much of a mess. And some good old H2O. Now, I've given the yeast everything it needs to start alcohol fermentation and producing the energy that it needs. So, again, one of the byproducts of this reaction is the gas, carbon dioxide. So to see this reaction in action, we can trap the gas with the help of a balloon. So if you take a little bit of balloon, put it over our fancy bottle, and we wait a few hours, we can start to see the buildup of the byproduct of the reaction. Now, unfortunately, this isn't a quick process, so I'll see you in a few hours. Bye. Thanks for sticking around. Well, this is actually one I set up yesterday, and you can see the buildup of a gas in the balloon. Now, ethanol is not a gas, HEP is not a gas, but carbon dioxide is, and that's what's in the balloon. So, alcohol fermentation, carbon dioxide, ethanol, and ATP. Once again, this is only going to make 2 ATP because it is an anaerobic process. Less efficient, no oxygen. This is actually one of the oldest chemical reactions ever studied. And yes, it is the very chemical reaction that is used to create the alcohol that we get in alcoholic beverages. Wine is fermented like this, beer is fermented like this. Now, way back when, a long time ago in France, a chemist called Antoine Lavoisier studied this very reaction to create his law of conservation of mass. Now, it is from this law that almost all scientific experiments are based on today. And that he realized that no matter is created and no matter is destroyed in any chemical reaction. It was this very reaction that he used to create it, and that was in 1789. So, alcohol fermentation, a good thing to know. Now, remember, lactic acid fermentation doesn't produce CO2, but it does produce lactic acid. Now, the next time your coach tells you to stretch out to practice or to massage your muscles, you know he's right. Because moving those muscles around, stretching them the right way, is going to bring oxygen-rich blood to the places where we had to do lactic acid fermentation. Now, moving that oxygen-rich blood to the places that hurt is going to help get rid of that metabolic waste, lactic acid, and help you feel a little bit better. Now, the best way to stop lactic acid from bugging you during exercise is actually sleep. So, researchers have found that athletes who get more sleep are better at doing cellular respiration, so they don't have to switch to lactic acid fermentation right away. Because they get more sleep, their bodies are more efficient at metabolizing glucose without having to go without oxygen. So, next time you don't want to hurt after a workout, get enough sleep the night before. Or all the time. So, let's review. When you're tired of respiration, let's do some fermentation, making energy without any oxygen. 2 ATP, let's count them again. 1, 2. Making lactic acid down in our muscles. Watch out, it's going to hurt when you start to hustle. Now, yeast also does a type of anaerobics, making ethanol and CO2. It's not hydrophobic. When you're tired of respiration, let's do some fermentation. When you're tired of respiration, let's do some fermentation. When you're tired of respiration, let's do some fermentation. 2 ATP. What?